How would you better recommend somebody to either go down the arbitrage route or to go down the ownership route?
It really just depends on, I think, less on the happiness of your job, but really what are your investing goals. If I want more cash flow now, then I'm going to do rental arbitrage. If I'm okay with my job, I'm, like this is kind of what I want to do, and I want to use that W-2 income to leverage and buy property, and then either self-manage that or hire a property manager, then I would go and buy and self-manage or buy and get a third-party manager.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Learn Like a CPA show. I'm your host, Ryan Bakey, and today we have a special guest, Michael Chang. He is an Airbnb operator, former corporate business employee turned full-time Airbnb entrepreneur. So Michael and I have been connected. Michael, I think we've been connected for maybe over 2 years now.
Yeah, quite some time. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show. I was a big fan of your tax content as I was researching short-term rentals as part of my business. So it was great to connect with you in person finally a few months ago in Nashville. Yeah,
and I knew you were going, but when you walked in, I was like, oh man, here he is. This is Michael. And you had your wife with you, and it was a good experience. And you brought Jeremy Warden with, who I just filmed a podcast with him yesterday. Great guy. Can you talk a little bit about what you do now as far as what your portfolio kind of looks like and what your mission is?
Yeah, we have about 30 properties, a mix of rental arbitrage, which is we will lease apartments from landlords and owners, and we will run them as Airbnbs with their permission. And we also own 7 properties that we use for short-term rentals as well. So my wife and I started this business in 2016. We left our jobs. She left her job 6 months afterwards. I left mine probably 2 years afterwards. And this is literally everything that this is all that we do to live in New York City and raise a family here.
Mm-hmm. What did you do first? Did you own your properties first, or did you do arbitrage first?
We did arbitrage first. So okay. I was working, so I had a full-time job. I was an M&A investment banker here in New York. Spent 10 years in finance at Citi and B of A Merrill Lynch. So those were long hours. I didn't have time. I didn't really understand real estate candidly. We were fairly restricted what we could invest in. But in 2016, we had read about Airbnb, and we had an opportunity to take some arbitrage units where we lived, and wanted to, it was a low cost way to test out a new business. And, luckily we found some initial success and have continued to grow that business.
And if I remember correctly, a lot of your properties are in the Smoky Mountains. Is that correct? And did you arbitrage stuff in the Smokies at first, or where did you get started?
So we started in New York City, actually, where we live. Funny story, we started off with a unit in a building that my father-in-law owns, and it's all long-term tenants, and we had an opportunity to there was a vacancy, so we were like, hey, could we rent a unit to do Airbnb? And he was like, what's Airbnb? And I was like, we explained it. He's like, okay. And we were successful doing that. So we kind of grew it in New York City. We grew it in the surrounding areas in around Manhattan, and ultimately grew that business even more in Philadelphia. So currently our portfolio is all rental arbitrage units in Philadelphia, plus 1 property that we own, and the rest are vacation rental cabins in the Smoky Mountains. And we've done that very purposefully, actually, which I'm happy to talk about if you like.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit more, because that's one of the biggest concerns or questions that I get from people that are new to the space is, hey, I live in Illinois. How the hell am I supposed to manage something that's in Florida if I'm, hundreds of miles away?
Yeah. So we live in New York City. And everything that we have from a short-term rental perspective is all Philly is 2 hours away. Smokies is 14 hours away. So a fair distance. So I would say that right now there's plenty of technology versus when I started in 2016. There is a lot of technology out there, PMS systems, dynamic pricing, VAs that you can use to automate your business, which we have. So we completely automated the business where we only work a few hours a week just to manage the core business. And everything is managed remotely through our VA teams that are based overseas, primarily in the Philippines. And we have people on the ground in Philadelphia and in Sevierville, Tennessee that clean, repair, manage the property. So it's all done remotely. And I would say actually it's an advantage to, as you graduate from owning for your first property, which will probably be local because you just want to kind of get started. But it's actually good to manage further away because it forces you to have the processes and people in place so that you can't just drive 45 minutes and fix something. Because if you feel like you can always go and fix something yourself, you're never ever going to build a system so that it can run on its own. And ultimately, as a business owner, you want to work on the business, not in the business.
I think I heard you talk about that before. So how did you stumble upon the Smoky Mountains, and when did you buy your first property there? I don't think I got that part.
So we closed in September of 2020. We used the short-term shop. So we actually talked with Avery back in 2017. I give her credit, my wife Liz, she found the Smokies back way before it was the Smokies. Where you could buy like a 4-bedroom for like $300K, and now that's $900K. So listen to your wives. So it was funny. When we first talked to Avery, she was driving, and we developed a good relationship with her. We didn't end up buying, but then when we were in 17, but when we were ready, we reached out to her and her team, and got our first property there, and have been able to acquire a few more over the years thereafter. So very fortunate to have bought kind of before. Things became really, really heated in late 22, early 23. Mm-hmm. So,
and what type of loans did you use on those? You said you have 7, right?
So they're all conventionally financed.
All conventional loans. Do those appear on your debt to income?
We have some do, some don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I guess this was kind of like a selfish question of mine. So how do you answer, let's say I am working in corporate America, and maybe combined between, husband and wife, we're making $300,000 a year. So, but we want to stop trading time for money and kind of get into real estate. How would you better recommend somebody, to either go down the arbitrage route or to go down the ownership route? Because there's people that come to me, even like clients of mine, that say, hey, we're going to, instead of buying another property, we're going to go down the co-hosting or the arbitrage, the service-based, sort of model route to build wealth instead. And I come back and I say, well, you already have a job. You're already working 40, 45 hours a week, plus, let's just say 50, 60. What makes you think you're going to have more time to go and manage somebody else's property? So is there like a litmus test or something you look to use? I've also, because I talked to Jeremy the other day, and he said that for him it really depends on whether or not they like their W-2. Because if you work at your W-2 and you don't mind your job and you like the hours, so maybe you go down the actual ownership or investing route, versus if you can't stand your job and you want to get out as quick as possible, then you need to replace your income as quick as possible, and then arbitrage and co-hosting is probably a better option.
Yeah. I guess I'll take a step back. I had a...
Hey guys, I want to interrupt this episode real quick to let you know about our free short-term rental tax training that I have available now. It's going to teach you all the tax strategies that you need to know to optimize your short-term rental portfolio and to help you scale and achieve financial freedom. It only takes 2 hours to get through, so go check it out at the link below.
Yeah. I guess I'll take a step back. I had a very nice corporate job. I was investment banking paid really, really well. It was a great, it was a great career to have. But for me, it was less about replacing that income, but more of doing something that, one, I really believed in. I believed that I could build a business, and wanted to give myself a shot. And two was, there's just a lot more advantages as being a business owner to really kind of build the equity for yourself versus, W-2 job where, you are, even if your pay is very high, you're still trading time for money. So, I don't lump arbitrage and co-hosting in one. Co-hosting is a purely service business. Co-hosting is just another word for a property manager. You manage your property, you get a fee, right? Generally 15, 20%. Arbitrage is slightly different, right? It's because you are a business owner. You're more of a business owner where you have more upside because although you don't own the property, you control the lease to that property, and leases actually have a lot of inherent value if you structure it correctly, right? So leases are transferable, they're monetizable. So if you can structure the proper lease for a rental arbitrage business, even if you are working, you are still building, I wouldn't say a service-based business, but you're building a business with upside. Maybe not equity upside, but there's plenty of upside there if it is a good property with a good lease and longer term and good renewals, et cetera, et cetera. Now, buying is completely different, right? Because buying, it requires a lot more capital out front, and it really just depends on, I think, less on the happiness of your job, but really what are your investing goals? Do I want more cash flow now? If I want more cash flow now, then I'm going to do rental arbitrage. If I'm okay with my job, I'm, like this is kind of what I want to do, and I want to use that W-2 income to leverage and buy property, and then either self-manage that or hire a property manager, then I would buy. Then I would go and buy and self-manage or buy and get a third-party manager. So I think it's really on like what is your investing goal versus what is my happiness with my job. I think that's at least the way that I would think about it.
So follow-up question there. Have you ever done any sort of lease-to-own agreements or purchase agreement options with the people you do arbitrage with?
No, because the buildings that we're in large multifamily buildings where there's hundreds of units. We're a small portion of that, so it wouldn't make any sense for the owners to entertain that. But look, if you're in a smaller building, right, 5-10 units, and if you lease most of those units, then absolutely, a lease to own option or some kind of option to buy the property at a predetermined price is definitely a strategy that I would pursue. Philly just doesn't really work in that way, but if you're in a different market, it could be helpful.
I mean, you must know something about Philly that nobody else knows, because you're like the only person I know that has wants to do any sort of investing or business in Philadelphia. I've heard of people in the Poconos of Pennsylvania, but I've never heard anybody in Philly. Is there a certain edge there?
Yeah. We've just been operating there for a while. I think, there's a certain clientele there. If you have the right product in the right location, you're able to service them properly. I think there's money to be made. Look, Philadelphia is in a way, it's a very unique city in the Northeast, right? There's, there's Boston, New York, Philly, DC, right? And Northeast, it's just generally higher ticket. Prices are higher there. So you can make more dollar margin there. So if you can figure that out, actually, for your return on time is a lot higher than even anywhere in south of the Mason-Dixon. It's just things aren't as expensive. So you might make more percentage margin, but your dollar margin generally be a little lighter. So again, just kind of what you're optimizing for. And I think that's how I really think about this. Is just what are you optimizing for? And that's kind of the strategy that we would follow. For us, it was we wanted to build cash flow, so we arbitrage. And then in order to build a business, and once we built that business, then we can use that cash flow to buy more properties, put that onto our platform, and then use that those two combined strategies to enjoy the tax advantages that you've helped us understand. So, thank you for doing that. But, cost segregation, bonus depreciation, a number of different strategies to really reduce the tax burden so that we can reinvest at a higher level.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into the tax strategies in just a second. You talked a little bit about return on time. That's not a lot. I don't see a lot of people talk about that, but when I first learned that concept of return on time or return on hassle, really, it definitely changed the way that I go about business. And I'll take, for example, you might have a property that's really good cash on cash return, which would be my Airbnb in Ohio. It has really good cash on cash return, but the overall cash flow amount, the dollar amount of money that I'm making per year, to your point, because it's in the Midwest and it's not as high ticket as a Northeast property would be, that is minimal compared to how many hours that I'm having to put in to manage and run that property. I guess where in your investing career did you always realize that from the beginning, or was that something it took you a while to understand, that return on time, return on hassle?
I think it was a concept that I was familiar with, but it really crystallized for me when we had we had one three bedroom apartment in New York, one of the arbitrage units we first got. And in the beginning, we actually cut that unit into three separate units. We would sell them individually, actually. But it was one entrance, two bathrooms, one kitchen, whatever, right? So you had to we were making more money because we were selling them individually at a higher price. But it was a pain in the butt because, different people coming in, managing the kitchen, the bathroom, complaints, all that stuff, right? And then we're just like, well, what are we doing here? We're never going to scale if we're going to look at it, if we're going to do business this way. And the way to really scale this is bigger properties that have bigger luxury properties that will attract people that will pay more. So that's something that we can replicate. So although the percent, return was lower, the dollars were in the aggregate way higher because maybe we could have done 3 or 4 of those and we'd be like, oh, great, we made a little bit of money, but we could never have done 30, right? And we would just be in a day-to-day on that, and just wasn't what I wanted to, I didn't think it was the best kind of use of our time. But look, I think when people start out, when you don't have a lot of capital, you don't have a lot of experience, and you kind of have to, it's really just that learning curve. You kind of go through that, okay, I get it now. Okay, and I understand this business, and I understand bigger is better. And then you need to kind of your own, everyone has their own kind of personal investment journey. I think they go through to understand that. You can always hear from other people until you experience it yourself. I think that's just a different way of, I think most people kind of learn better that way.
Yeah. So to get into some of the tax strategy pieces, what are some of the strategies you've utilized in the past? Where have you heard them from, of course, and what is some of the coaching and the teaching that you do? Because I noticed a lot of your posts, at least probably one a week or one every other week, revolves around this idea of, hey, if you're a high income earner and you're investing in real estate, and you're not strategizing, you're probably leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table,
if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we are heavy, we use cost segregation studies, which basically is just a way to push, when you buy assets, to push them into a lower life, to be able to actually separate them out of just 39-year life property, and then so you can depreciate them faster. Those are really tax deferral strategies. You got to deal with recapture and everything else afterwards. But you kind of get an interest-free, no collateral loan from the government, indefinite term. So those are pretty good terms to get. So we definitely do a lot of that. I learned a lot from. You were one of the first guys I saw on Twitter. You and some of your other people, some of your other CPA brethren, learned a lot on Twitter. Learned a lot on reading on blogs, watching YouTube. I think it's actually somewhat underappreciated. If you kind of grew up in corporate America, there's a lot of great content on social media. You kind of have to sort through the wheat, sort for the wheat through the chaff. But I did a lot of learning through there, and I had an M&A background, so I really understood accounting. I understood accounting and finance and structure. I just didn't I didn't know how to apply it to STRs. But once I did, I was like, and the light bulb came up, and I was like, okay, we got to really do this because it's really one of the best ways for any retail investor in America, anyone that understands real estate and has a business mindset. This is literally the best investment strategy out there. And I'm an investment banker. I've seen a lot of different investment opportunities and structures. This is the best combination of tax efficiency, leverage, scalability that you'll find in any, in finding anything like FBA, Amazon FBA drop shifting, all those other buying small businesses, running laundromats. You don't want to do that. This is way better. This is a much better business.
Yeah, I never really thought about it until you just said that. But when you look at, the overall investing scheme of people, let's just say over the last quarter century, I don't think there's ever could be a potential bigger wealth building strategy for people out there that are, not millionaires, maybe 6-figure earning potential, but I name a strategy out there, I can't think of one,
With that combination, right? One, you get leverage. You can put 10 down and borrow 9 to 1, or if you can go 20, you can borrow 4 to 1. That doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And it's only because the government subsidizes those mortgages, right? If you're in corporate America, those terms they don't exist. So you can invest using subsidized government funding, and the tax code is super advantage for you to go and buy property and take a bunch of tax benefits from that. And you can actually generate real cash flow versus a long-term rental, right? Where you're just doing a couple $100 a month. You actually can generate 20, 30% cash on cash if you find the right property. And you're not the one that actually has to sit there and do it. There's the technology and the people and the systems now that you can build all that and it can run it for you. So if you can figure it out, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you can figure it out, it really is the holy trifecta of investing, which is why I left a 7-figure job in investment banking in order to build this business for my wife and I.
So you do a lot of educating and teaching. Was anybody in your family teachers or coaches or educators, or how did you stumble upon being able to do that?
I think for me, it was I had a lot of help along the way. Mm-hmm. We moved to the country when I was a kid. We're immigrants. My family immigrants. We definitely didn't grow up with a silver spoon. I was going to learn the value of education. I think that kind of typical immigrant story. But I learned a lot about running this business from others and just asking questions, people being generous with their time. And, I think we have something here that people really need to understand. I think there's a lot of other businesses that are pitched out there that I don't think are as attractive as this. They might be marketed better, but they're definitely not as attractive as this. And I looked around the landscape and I didn't see anyone that had, that was teaching it in the way that I thought it should be taught, right? I think there is a combination of analytics, obviously like business smarts, but analytics here, data analysis, just the whole gamut of business that I saw from the corporate side that I think was very, very applicable to the short-term rental space. It just wasn't being taught the way that I felt it should be taught. And I wanted to share my experiences and the fact that, I think people see me and says, hey, Michael, you went to an Ivy League school, you got a full ride, you got your MBA, you got this, great job. Like, why would you leave it to do Airbnb? And I was like, well, actually, because it's so great. Just, people don't understand that. And, let me help you figure this out. And even if you don't want to quit your job, that's fine. Like, you don't have to. You can enjoy maybe not all the advantages, but at least some of it. The world isn't black and white, right? It's, we could look at everything. I look at everything on a gradient and like, yeah, it might not be 100%, but you can get half the benefits and keep your job and whatever, like you'll be fine. And I'll just end with, look, I live in New York City. We have a young child. We have another one on the way. It's not a cheap place to live. And we're able to support our lifestyle here and continue to reinvest in our business. So if you have any questions on like the scalability and the cash flow power of this business, just look at the way that we've constructed our business. I think it's very, very doable. And to the extent that we can help others learn how to do this, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, that's a great segue. Where can listeners of the show get connected with you?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Michael Chang B&B. Everything is on there. Feel free to DM me. And, I would just, plug... or just shout out to Ron Yu. Like I think you really, the tax part is really hard to understand. And I think you do a really good way of like simplifying it in digestible pieces that like we as non-tax professionals can understand and apply in our business. And I drew a lot of inspiration on the way that I taught the tax part of my course. So, thank you for sharing your knowledge with all of us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.